Mhm.
Hello, welcome, Lucas.
Hello.
Welcome to our conversation today. Ah, so good to see you. We spent a little bit of time together, living together in New Zealand, and I, I think the moment I met you, I don't know whether you remember this, but we had an unspoken moment, and I remember looking into your eyes and thinking, this is a Celtic man, and I just felt a really strong bond. Like I just felt this sense of like, this is a special person and I want to get to know this person. So I'm really glad that we somehow began to weave together and now we're living on the other side of the world again from each other, but we're coming back to have a conversation around your life and your soul's journey and your path and anything you feel to share about who you are and what lights you up in the world.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's so beautiful to be in this space and to already feel the shift in the energy just as we've initiated this and to recall that moment of meeting.
Mm.
Yeah, it was so powerful to meet another very powerful being. And you're someone who intimidates me with the amount of power that can flow through creatively in your being. And yeah, to be met head to head in that moment and to feel and hear your words of I'm here to support whatever you're bringing. And that really broke me down into tears in that moment. It was really impactful. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that first encounter and
Mm.
meeting.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, it's one of life's gifts, I think, to have those moments where you can say the thing that you want to say and the other person's not going to freak out and run away.
Yeah,
Ah,
less hiding.
yeah. So I'd love you to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about who you are and what you do and what
Mm.
makes you feel alive.
Mm. So I'm a Scottish being that is endeavoring to live soulfully and poetically. I just changed my bio to Scottish soul poet. And in many ways, I don't write poetry, but when I'm really connected to soul, as I speak, it comes out like poetry. And particularly when I look into another person's eyes and I see into their soul and describe it to them, it comes out in the most poetic, beautiful images that are really fresh. And yeah, I try to write with that same level of freshness and just bring that quality or essence into whatever I'm doing. And right now, what that is offering one-to-one online calls for transitions between homes and supporting working with the Davic lives and yeah, kind of blending counseling and transformational coaching with ritual and yeah, self-reflection to kind of make the most out of these powerful transitions. And I'm also doing some group work here at Haydn. I'm hosting an event in January, which is blending, yeah, a play with land and body and the relationship between them with the erotic and understanding that as this like upwelling of joy and deep feeling that can nourish our lives in ecstatic moments that can be in simple things like washing the dishes or walking in the sun and or writing a poem or as well as like deeply intimate moments with others. So these are like my current explorations, but in the past, yeah, I had a career in diving where I was paid to dive and go around the country jumping off 10-meter diving boards and seeing the world and yeah, competing in high pressure environments and being surrounded by highly successful people in their field there. And so many diamonds have been reaped from that intense experience in my life um, that I'm sure we'll go into
Mm.
some point in our call.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, thanks for
Mm.
sharing. I wondered what you meant. I saw you were a soul home mover or whatever you're calling it. And I thought, is that physical homes or is that like a metaphor for something like something transitioning out of a phase or yeah.
Yeah, it's quite literal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that yeah, the rational mind thinks like, oh, it's not a very productive way to make money, and it's very niche. And in the deep listening of my being, what really lights me up is the idea of supporting people through these transitions, which are usually really stressful times, and just bringing consciousness and awareness into that, where you're really at a point of completion and entering a new cycle. I feel like they're really powerful moments for reflecting on the past. And oh, have we paused?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're frozen.
All right, I think
Okay.
we're back now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think they're really powerful moments for reflecting on what's been, the patterns that have come before, and planting seeds for, yeah, your growth and a new
Hmm.
cycle to come. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
that's what
that.
lights me up at the minute.
Cool. Well, I'm a big supporter of doing what feels alive because
Mm.
yeah, I'll speak for myself. I spent many years of my career doing things that did feel purposeful or I felt like I was doing something worthy. But for lots of it, I did feel alive. I look back now and I think there's a very fine line between aliveness and such high levels of cortisol that you think you're but actually you're in an adrenalized state that's like nearly hysterical. Um, but I did feel very alive working in the UK. In British politics, I felt very on purpose. But as the years went on in my government career, that sense of aliveness melted away, and I felt like I was really slogging through um, heavy treacle trying to get somewhere. And then I reached a point where I just thought, I'm just here for much more than this, actually. Like I could sit here and coast and do my work and write the papers to the minister and all the things and get paid very handsomely for it all. But yeah, I was going through an awakening at the time. So most of the time I wanted to put my head through my laptop screen because I was had so much energy moving through me and I just didn't know what to do with myself. Um, but now I'm in a position where I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing and what makes me feel alive. And there's just no other way. And of course, there's challenges that come with that. You know, I have far less financial security. There's just generally a lot less conditioned patterning and behavior in my life, which can be scary for the part of me that still wants things to look a certain way. But I wouldn't trade it for that feeling of, like you said, deep listening in the being of what am I actually supposed to be doing right now? Yeah.
Yeah, it was one thing Janine recommended, or perhaps Bruce, some of the teachers here at Haydn, is to like talk to the deva of money and ask it like, yeah, how can I be of service? And I like to ask how can I be of greater service to the whole? I'm just in a continual inquiry around that where I keep asking myself that and really listening into if there's any points of compromise within me, particularly looking out for that at the minute, like an inner sense of compromise where yeah, there's some part of me that's negated in a sense of what I think I ought to do, rather than a full, complete yes. Um, and so, yeah, I'm really testing my faith in that process and welcoming the learnings that will come along the way of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's learnings whichever way we go, even if we get it wrong or right, you know? So it's just part of life. I'd love to hear about your life and your path and a little bit more about who you are and how you ended up being a professional diver and then how you ended up not being a professional diver and becoming a soul home mover and a soul poet and all the other things that you do.
Mm. Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I came into this world with a lot of contact with whatever soul represents. Yeah, I find myself in an environment now where I'm surrounded by people who are expressing their souls. And it's like it comes through in just abundant talents, like so many gifts that are just feeding the community. And I feel so very blessed that coming into this lifetime, is even as a child, that so many talents and gifts through creativity or athleticism or academia, like schoolwork, and just a general all round, um, yeah, uh, yeah, ability to do things beautifully. Um, yeah, I feel like I came into this lifetime with a lot of that, and with parents that were able to support that and take me to music lessons and to gymnastics and tennis, and do like really able to, yeah, to work these gifts that wanted to come through this little boy. And yeah, I guess growing up, I've just excelled in a lot of things, and been a bit of an overachiever in many ways. And looking back now, I can understand that it's quite typical of a lot of overachieving people, that there's deep feelings of unworthiness or the need to prove love that are fueling a lot of this outer expression in some ways. And I can certainly relate to that. But at about 7, I started gymnastics, and very soon that became a really big focus in my life, where I was competing nationally for Scotland in gymnastics. And it actually like came into that through a dance class, a breakdancing class that my mum took me to when I must have been about 5 or 6. And it
Mm.
was like a superheroes breakdancing class, and I just loved doing handstands. And so they were like, okay, we'll take him to gymnastics, and then that led into a more rigorous, intense training of 5 days a week. And at one point, I lost my love for it and my passion for it. Um, and yeah, I felt a curiosity around diving, which became a new part of my life. So at one point, this blessed little child was doing 5 days a week of gymnastics, and the other 2 days were diving. And so it's just like an unbelievable amount of activity that, as an adult, I'm like, how on earth did I do that? But children seem to have this resiliency, and capacity for so much that is unbelievable, really. And yeah, at some point I shifted and transitioned into diving, and it was like a reset for me, where suddenly this Olympic dream wasn't the thing that was fueling me, and I just wanted to be there for the joy of it and the love. And my only goal was to be in that group that I saw training across the other side of the pool, the performance squad that looked like they were having so much fun and laughter like in their sessions. And that was my only goal. And about 9 months later, I was in that group being trained by the head coach at Edinburgh, and she sat me down very soon after and was like, "Yeah, we have 3 years until the Commonwealth Games, and this is our building blocks to get there." And at the time, it was like, "Whoa, this is this is like really big, an almost unimaginable goal." And yet, yeah, journey after moment and initiation after initiation, it led to that point, which was definitely a peak in my diving career, performing at the Commonwealth Games in the Gold Coast, Australia, in front of thousands of people, and the open air at multi-sport games, and at 16 years old, and yeah, and celebrating one of the most fulfilling, joyous competitions of my life, something that I'd worked and dreamed of so much. Um, yeah, and so I continued diving throughout school and into university, um, and began university and went to the University of Edinburgh, studying politics, philosophy, and economics. And yeah, when I transitioned into university, things began to shift in terms of priorities, and I started to no longer see diving as just the priority of my life, and start to look for a bit more fulfillment all around. And what became important to me shifted. And yeah, it kind of culminated in, yeah, some peak experiences of trauma that was then worked through with a psychologist at the university that, yeah, culminated in an intense experience, an initiation now that I look back at it in terms of soul words. But yeah, that led to me retiring from diving, and yeah, about a year later, finding myself in the perfect crisis that led to me moving to New Zealand and yeah, deeply diving into the esoterics at Haydn Mystery School, where I'm based now, and really finding myself thriving and enjoying life in the small moments and the big in such richness that is really remarkable. And I think younger versions of myself that were so numbed out and stressed um, could never have imagined the joy that and prosperity I'm feeling now in my life. Um, yeah, so that's a paint stroke over my
Mm.
life there.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. It's always so interesting to look back at the achievements that some of us achieve at such a young age, because looking back with adult eyes, the level of intensity, the level of resilience, as you say, and structure and discipline that needs to be not only kind of taken by you, but also your family and your structure and the network around you to get you to where you wanted to go is quite remarkable actually when I think about having a family myself hopefully one day and what I would want for my child. If that's the path that they really want to go down, I trust that everything gives us lessons in life and we'd work with whatever happens as it happens, but there is a compression, I imagine, that can happen because there's just not so much time and spaciousness to play and be in joy. And I know for myself, I had an incredibly joyful, spacious, imaginative, magical childhood, and it was the years of going to a school from 11 to 18 where although I was happy at school mostly, um, like there was such a squeezing on my sense of self. And I really see that time as one of the big ruptures in my sense of identity because I was very shy and I came to this school when I was 11 and then I remember saying to my mum, I'm going to die if I'm shy here. Like I just, and there was this that happened inside myself where I was self-aware enough to know um, I'm not a cool person here and I need to do something about that. I actually went to the inset day or the mufti day or whatever you call it when you wear your own clothes on the first day, wearing my
Uh-huh.
favorite outfit, which was boys' baggy denim shorts, like skate shorts, and a
Love
surfer
that.
t-shirt. And I had this crochet rainbow hat and Vans, and I was just such an androgynous, like hippie child. And I went to this town school with all these all girls school, and everyone was wearing bras already, and everyone was wearing makeup and tight jeans and little tops, and I just remember thinking, I've got this really wrong. Like this is suicidal. Like I'm in the wrong outfit right now. And that's such a devastating feeling at such a young age to like have your sense of identity like reflected back to you as this is not okay to be like this. And I really see that time as something I've had to go back to a lot, where a big schism happened in my sense of self. Um, and that's nobody's fault. It's just part of life, living in a sheltered life and then coming out into the world and being like, ah, I have to reorientate. Um, so I wonder if you see that although there's probably many gifts of those years, like whether there was um, yeah, maybe parts of you that weren't able to express because you were on this mission.
Mm. 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 Yeah, first I just want to acknowledge, like, yeah, that period of one's life is, I think for many, and certainly for myself, there's so much fear and survival that comes in what others think of you. And yeah, a real sense of insecurity um, that one can feel um, in relation to other peers at that age. Yeah, it's such a tender part of one's life, some of the hardest years, I think, for many of us.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what immediately comes up to me in response to your question is it's almost like what was filled in that space and what's arising is just a lot of stress for that young body. And I have a recollection of a memory in primary school that's quite significant. I used to do violin lessons, and yeah, I could kind of get by at the start of doing them because I don't know, I picked it up quite fast and easily, and I didn't really need to practice. But then, yeah, as the years went on, it got harder to just wing it, and I'd feel so much stress in my body, and when trying to sight read the music and also having that sense of needing to perform perfectly at the same time is also not having much time because I'm training 5 days a week um, as a young gymnast and already a very saturated life. And I remember one moment of just breaking down into absolute tears and the deputy head like taking me to a room and sitting down and ended up like calling my mum and yeah, kind of wondering if there was anything going on at home and yeah, and just a lot of stress and tension in that poor body of my younger self. And yeah, and even as a teenager and well into my diving career, like even at university, it was just a constant daze, like no spaciousness as you mentioned. So I'd be waking up on Tuesday. Yeah, at high school, I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., go to the pool, train for 2 hours in the morning, and then in the car on the way back, I'd nap. And most of my dad would take me back, and I'd get into biology class with my big tub of like half a liter of yogurt with raspberries and granola. And in the class, I could just be munching away on my yogurt. The biology teacher didn't mind. And, yeah, and it was a full day of school, and then zipping off back to the pool for another 2.5 hour session. Get back home at what 9:30, and then it's bedtime, and it's like yeah, just no spaciousness in one's day. And that's what I really relished when I finally did stop diving was the chance to just wander about the streets of Edinburgh following my intuition after class. Like I usually had to rush home to get food and then head off to the pool, and I could finally just find myself in a nun's monastery graveyard and sitting there and just enjoying the vibes or connecting with the spirits there or just yeah wandering and feeling more of that sense of magic coming into my life that comes in spacious moments. Um, yeah, I never really brought much attention to even grieving the lack of that throughout most of my life. But yeah, I feel that. Yeah, feel
Did
that
you have an
now.
awareness from a young age that you were connected to magic or connected to spirit and the unseen realms in any way?
So as a very small child, I was obsessed with fairies.
Mm.
Like I loved books about fairies and yeah, would yeah, from what I remember, I would see them and yeah, I just had an adoration with them along with birds and insects and a lot of natural world things. But yeah, I guess it wasn't really watered and I wasn't in an environment around spiritual people and um, my parents being very agnostic and yeah, it was only much later and really actually in the COVID pandemic that I met someone deeply spiritual in the woods, which, you know, I'd go down to the woods and just relax and just be and be in my sense of wonder without any framework of realizing that to be a deeply spiritual and nourishing act. And but I'd be there and I would go down during the pandemic lockdowns into the woods and swing about on this children's swing that had been put up there. And bear in mind, I'm like 18 at this time, like just allowing myself to be childlike in that wonder and curiosity. And it was down at that swing that a neighbor walking down, um, she sat down to meditate at the base of the tree, and I was like, oh, like I was just gonna play about on the swing here, and we ended up talking, and it was her, it was the first person, and it was like telling me to meditate on the heart, that we all come from the same place and go back to the same place, which at the time was like, oh, I don't know about this, like it was much more like a scientific realism sort of um, advocate, and yet there was something that unlocked in these moments of meditating on my heart and noticing the difference. And quite intuitively, I was brought to meditation in my life at quite a young age. At like must have been about 14. I began meditating daily. Um, I found this book that was called How to Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And that really was quite radical in a time where I felt super self-conscious and um, conscious about fitting in. And yeah, I guess in those early teenage years, a lot of shame and inadequacy feelings coming up and surfacing, particularly in social settings. And yeah, and that book was recommended to on this YouTube channel called Charisma on Command, which was like a channel designed to help people become more charismatic. But it was so beautiful in the core essence of it was like just encouraging you to be yourself. And that was the key to charisma. And it was, yeah, subtly, yeah, I look back now with my soul, like, oh, okay, yeah, I was drawn to that for a reason, and it was nourishing me in many ways. And so, yes, I'd meditated a lot and throughout my life, and Headspace and other apps, and mainly for my own performance and sport and staying in the moment and not thinking about the dive before or the dive ahead. Yeah, my whole competition routine was all about staying present in that moment. And so I would train myself with meditation. But yeah, it was only during the 2020 lockdown that I started experiencing more spiritual states where I remember telling my mum, like, if there's a God, that's what God would feel like. Um, and then, yeah, and from then my path into spirituality developed and blossomed with beautiful people who came into my life to cultivate that. But yeah, there's always been a thread in some ways of being connected to the unseen or to the deeply spiritual within, but yeah, almost unconsciously for most of my life.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you talk about meditation as a pathway to peak performance because as you're sharing, it's kind of reminding me of something that I'm really interested in, which is the tantric tools, breath, sound, movement, touch. If you take away, what somebody might perceive as like spiritual or woo-woo or esoteric or whatever it may be, what can be accessed through a path of self-discovery, it doesn't even have to be spiritual, with breath, sound, touch, movement, accessing transcendental states, bringing the erotic body online and having an embodied sense of life current moving through, which often can happen through like tantric awakenings or sexual awakenings, kundalini awakenings. But there's so much that lives in the vessel of an awakened person where actually a lot of people, peak performance, CEOs, business people, like they've got a lot to learn, and I'm sure that this is probably happening, if not will happen in the years to come, where actually more collective awakening happens and people start to realize, oh, actually all this spiritual shit, like it's actually really supportive because having an ability to be the witness and the observer of the mind and step away from this belief that we are everything that we think and have a live, creative vessel that can feel in the shamanic realms what's happening and can use this regenerative life current as creativity, as sense of purpose. Like all of that just actually could blast open the reality of, I guess, a traditional peak performance or, high achieving kind of archetype where everything is so disciplined, like the classic people that talk about their morning routine, which is like get up, have a sauna, like have an ice bath, do breath work, like eat a few dates. Like it's just all these different ways in which so many people these days are trying to maximize their life by hacking
Mm.
different parts of their soul and their psyche and their body to be able to show up more in the fullest nature of who they are. Actually, a lot of that can be achieved through a very different and much more enjoyable path, I think, which is about aliveness and vitality. Yeah.
Yeah, and just listening to that, it reminds me of the latter stage of my diving career, where working with this new psychologist, so much of it was bringing deep presence into my sensations
Mm.
and all of the senses, including sound, which I'd never contemplated before. But to actually help with my awareness in the air was to start listening and even smelling the water as I'm spinning around each rotation, as well as using my sight and feeling where the blood is moving within my body to help that awareness and thinking about rhythm too and all that combining in a way that can't employ the mind
Mm.
because it's too quick. It happens in a second and a half, a dive almost, or 2 seconds. And yeah, it was a deeply spiritual act. And I realized that whenever a dive went wrong, it was in correlation with my inner voice being active at the time. So if my inner mind would speak midway through the dive, I would lose it. I wouldn't have that sense of flow that comes when I'm just in full alignment. And when the dives went extraordinarily well, it didn't feel like it was me that did the dive. And I recognized this as like, wow, it's like something else is moving me in this act. And so much of my preparation became creating the conditions that would allow that state of flow, which for me was deeply spiritual, to emerge through. And yeah, I really feel that tension in what you mentioned about those who are biohacking and trying to achieve some kind of end or result that's constructed by the mind in some ways, or it's like I feel the potential when that deep authenticity and full listening of one's being that's almost, yeah, larger than just the personal self and the combination of all these tools and things that can come and serve that greater, deeper purpose that wants to move through in the most alive way that feels really precious and beautiful.
Mm. Yeah, and I'd love to talk a little bit about creativity because you're also outrageously creative and play the piano so beautifully. When we used to live together, I used to always stop and listen and I remember a few moments where I just like had a tear. I actually feel emotional thinking about it now. Like, yeah, I don't know, there's just something in your innocence and the essence. Um, of the way that you would play the piano. And it was like, I could just sense that you're getting lost somewhere. Um, and so I wonder if you could talk about how your creative channel works, because I think for a lot of people, this idea of being moved by something greater than themselves, or this idea of opening up your channel
Mm.
for life to move through, is actually quite a foreign concept. But we can all connect with it when we see a musician or a dancer or an artist or whatever it may be, an outer expression of someone when they're there. They're not disassociating, but they're also not there. It's like some great force come through. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the word that's screaming out to me right now as I hear you speak about that. It's play.
Mm,
Like there's such a large part of my being that thrives in play. And I feel like, yeah, it's such a deep secret of the universe and the deeply spiritual and unseen, the Davic lives, but also just like when I when I arrive home at Haydn after a time away, like the first thing I always do is I run to the piano and I just sing for the joy of singing. And yeah, it comes through me in so many ways of just like singing between places as I'm walking down the passageway or in the hall or to the bathroom. But in those moments of yeah, performance too, hmm, yeah, there's a sense of something coming over you and it sort of yeah, it just starts with authenticity and feeling
mm,
like yeah, I feel the most moving expressions of creativity and art come from that place where that being is feeling something
mm,
deeply tender and deeply human. And I've always had an ability to be able to channel that and be in touch with that um, through my voice and singing and art and creation. And I think it's partly to do with being a very sensitive human being um, throughout my life. And with that sensitivity can come great overwhelm and yeah, deeply painful experiences, but also such potential for orchestras of beauty to
mm,
move through.
mm. Can feel like I'm on the edge of like getting super emotional. And I think yeah, what it's related to is I feel such resonance with you as this like incredibly sensitive person who's connected to the fabric of life. Um, yeah, this the way that I interacted with the world as a child, which I is how I interact with the world now because I've been able to find it and remember it. It is being so open. Um, like when I walk into a forest, I walk my dog on the Etna volcano, and when I walk into the forest, it's like I'm so aroused. Like the forest is like moving through me, and I feel so at home and at peace there. And I find the normal world like hard, and clunky. And so there was a lot of protection and can be a lot of protection that comes in, around that. And yeah, a way that I express myself in the most vulnerable and deepest way is through my writing, because it's like something is coming through me that if I was at a dinner party, I might not speak in the same way. I remember somebody said to me once that they actually understood the depth of my being through my writing in a way that they'd known me for years, but they'd never got the key in because I can be quite guarded. And I do just feel there are these moments, and that's why it makes me emotional when I think of you at the piano, where the veil, not that you're a veiled person, but the veil comes down, and it's like we can see the expression of somebody's soul and their pain. And it does, we never don't have to know the story of it, but the raw exhilaration of seeing and feeling like life moving through someone in that moment is so magical. And that's why rock concerts, like bring everybody to their knees, and then everyone goes home again on the tube, and much great it was. But actually, I think that's why there's an electricity that happens when we're in a crowd of people where we're connected to, um, yeah, something that is actually so unspoken and unseen often in the day-to-day world, but actually it's there if we're able to feel it all the time. Mm.
Yeah, I
Mm.
can almost feel a sense of greediness within me of just wanting more and more of that to just like erupt throughout my life and throughout everyone else's life even more. But another part that, yeah, trusts in the rhythm and yeah, the timing and right expressions and the waves of that, you know? Like
Mm.
I feel like, yeah, there's also great beauty in, yeah, the vacillation, and something I'm really attuning to in my life at the minute is, yeah, really embracing the points of numbness in my life where I feel the lack of all of that life and a lack of love.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, yeah, some of the wisdom of Richard Rudd's Gene Keys is, and the first Gene Key is a lot of just, yeah, like embrace that numbness that comes over out of the blue, and it will leave when it's ready in its own timing just as quick. And the more we try and figure out what's wrong with me or try and fix it, of all things, like that just gets in the way.
Mm.
And yeah, I've been in a deep um, surrender and contemplation of that process, and in realizing that those states of numbness are deeply fertile states for creativity that will emerge. And more so now, I'm noticing that these moments of numbness in the unpleasant way, but also emptiness when I'm in more spiritually aligned states or in meditation, where it's like there's no sense of self that's active, and it's like, yeah, I'm connected to something that's not fully in my awareness, but it's there and I can feel it. These states where there's not much going on, like after them, there's like a burst of creativity in life that comes in a way that I could never have created with my small mind.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm in deeper surrender to that process as well as the ecstatic life, heart wrenching, breaking moments.
Yeah, totally. And I believe that everything in life serves us, all our experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the challenging, and the level of self-awareness that can be gained from really high intensity experiences in our life, such as what you've described, can be such fertile growth for fast transformation. And yeah, I really believe that like I'm a soul on a mission. I move at a very fast pace. I always have done. And I'm now learning to adjust my burn rate because I wanted to get to the top of the ladder. I wanted to get to the core of British politics and see what it's all about and, drink it all in. And then suddenly it's like, bang, okay, and now I'm going here and now I'm at the, core of the spiritual path and I'm breaking myself open and I'm on my knees and show me the way. And now, with a bit of kind of wisdom and maturity and like having my fingers burnt many times, now I'm like a little bit more discerning about where I go and, where I put my energy um and like I said, my burn rate. But I do believe that some of us are primed for depth. And once, yeah, I have tasted the depth of what's possible in life, yeah, it's a big well to drink from, and it's hard to go back from there, and it just keeps revealing. And it's part of life's beauty that we learn from everything. And I can imagine, I don't know, perhaps for your parents, or at least for mine, they wanted me to not necessarily achieve, but they just wanted me to be happy and to be secure and healthy and have a beautiful life. Nobody ever told me that I had to do something, but for whatever my makeup is, the little person inside of me, the overachiever that then was praised a lot for overachieving. So I thought, okay, well, I better keep doing this because I'm getting praise for it, and equating that with love. that can be a very long path, you know, to come back around from because it's like deep, deep grooves in the psyche that start to yeah, develop a sense of self around overachievement. So I just celebrate you so much for, in your fairly short lifetime, having had these incredible peak experiences and be able to be in the joy and the play and like alchemize those experiences to live a life that's deeply fulfilling for you. I just find that really beautiful.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm just drinking in your words there.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, deep gratitude for it. Yeah, and it's hard and quite a radical thing to do to accept um all of the painful experiences and the trauma and the tribulations. And yeah, there's always a part of my mind that's like, wow, that's a really radical thing to say, you know, that it all everything serves you. And yet there's like a really humbling uh, piece of my heart that recognizes something in that, you know,
Mm.
and yeah, and has for whatever reason been conditioned to think quite positively and to try and make the most and alchemize my experiences, even the painful ones, and to learn. And yeah.
Mm. Mm. I wondered if in this conversation we would touch on sexuality and the erotic and connecting with nature through that way. But it feels like we've maybe found a natural closing. So maybe that's a conversation for another day. I saw your face light
Oh,
up a little bit.
beautiful.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's many, many, many avenues that I could go down with you. I enjoy the way that you see the world and the lyricism, the Celtic lyricism that kind of moves through you, and also your joy and your playfulness. It's just such a delight to be in your company. So thank you so much for this conversation. And if there's anything else you want to talk about or share, then please go for it.
Thank you, Olivia. Yeah, it's a real joy to yeah, to feed off one another in this place and to fall into that yeah, that aliveness and that ecstasy that's moving through me in ever greater doses as the conversation goes on.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I have deep honor for the way that you've held the space and crafted the questions and shared really beautiful, poignant, touching pieces. And thank you for meeting me there in that place.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more someday, explore other avenues with you.
Yeah, yeah, me too. When I woke up this morning, I'm doing two interviews today and I'm about to bleed. And so I thought there's either going to be a lot of pre-menstrual truth serum that comes in, or there's going to be a lot of like wafting around and crying. So we'll see. We'll see how my one later goes. But yeah, it's so beautiful to talk to you. And if anybody who is watching this needs a soul home mover, then I highly suggest getting in touch with Lucas for a long distance shamanic clearing.
Yeah.
Mm. All
Mm.
right. Bye, darling.
Oh,
Thank you
thanks,
so much.
Olivia.